Good morning, Stansted Airport College, and welcome to this fabulous first guest speaker slot of our new academic year. Today, we welcome three very distinguished guests from the CAA to our talk, Solitaire, Charles, and Ranji, who I'll introduce a little bit more about shortly. The talk today is Diversity in Aviation. Now, as you probably all know, because you've all watched the little video in advance, that the CAA are responsible for a huge number of things to do with aviation. The regulation of aviation safety in the UK, determining policy for the use of airspace, regulations for our airports, licensing, that's operators and pilots, the management of the ATOL financial protection schemes for holidaymakers, and so very much more, which you will find out. We hope today that you will gain much more information from this talk, and it will ignite your enthusiasm to continue thinking about careers in aviation. There are so many different roles that are open to all of us. It's a fabulously exciting time for all of the world when it comes to aviation. So much is changing. Technology is moving fast. Communication systems are changing as we speak. Travel arrangements across the entire customer experience map are altering on a daily basis as expectations and needs are better known from a more sophisticated customer base. And innovative ways of using aviation to support global industries that perhaps haven't been involved or used aviation before. For instance, yesterday we talked about how donor organs can be transported via drones from the departure to the arrival locations. Absolutely incredible. So at the end of today's talks, there will be times for questions and answers. So please do leave any questions you have right to the very end. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first guest speaker to take to the microphone. And so I'm introducing Solitaire Atakora, who is a technical standards surveyor.
Hi there, and thank you for having me. So I'm just here to talk about my career or my journey into aviation. So I, in my younger years, actually wanted to be a Formula One engineer, but wasn't really sure how to go about it. And in that period, after that joined the police cadets and still wasn't sure what I wanted to do career-wise until I joined the air cadets at 13. And being in the environment with people who had been around aircraft and we got to go fly in, I was like, oh, this seems really interesting, but wasn't really sure about the route to go down. So I was quite early on in my career conflicted between going to university or joining the RAF. And so after 4 years in the air cadets, I had a few people who went to study aerospace engineering. So at college, decided to take physics, chemistry, and then I didn't know what else to do. So I said, oh, I'll take something social like sociology, and then did politics. And then I was like, well, actually, those weren't really the best things to do. Did that and was like, oh, I still don't know how to get into this, really conflicted about the RAF, because I'd ask people about it and they'd say that maybe it wasn't the best thing, and all the conversations about things like war and fighting. And so then I took a year out, worked, just really wanted to know what to do, and then did a foundation degree in sciences at Greenwich University and realized that sciences definitely wasn't the route that I wanted to go down. So once I had finished that, I had applied for 3 aerospace courses with Kingston University, one based at Norwich, one based at Newcastle, which was Norwich was KLM, Newcastle Airport, and then Marshall's in Cambridge. I chose Cambridge because it was closer to home. It was like a 45-minute drive from London. So when I joined Cambridge, when I joined Marshall's was when I really got the aerospace experience. And so although the course was led by Kingston, it was a lot more practical at Marshall's. And I'm not sure if people know, but Marshall's is Cambridge Airport, and they do military work, military contracts. And so we really got to see a lot of the work that they did. So we spent 1 day a week in the hangar doing practical stuff. And then the rest of the 4 days was theory-based. And I really started to excel practically, but theory-based was a bit boring to me. I realized that I was very much more a hands-on person than a study the book person. But completed that and did my final year in Kingston, which turned my degree from a foundation degree to a BSc. During my period at Kingston, the last sort of quarter of it, the summer, they had a job description for the Civil Aviation Authority, the CAA, as a summer internship. So I thought I would do that while I figure out what to do next. And that's where I met Ranji. So we spent the summer doing some work for safety data just to clear a backlog that they had, which was really interesting. I think that was when we really got to utilize the connections and know what they did more in the CAA. So that was from May till September. And then September came around and I was like, oh, I don't know what I really want to do with myself, because I had always been practical based. So actually my initial plan was to go and do my exams for my licenses and work on the mechanic side, because my degree was aircraft engineering, maintenance, repair and overhaul. So not quite the same as some of the others. And so September came and I was like, oh, it was either do a master's or stay at the CAA. And as I said before, theory-based stuff wasn't really my thing. So the master's was just something to continue on with, but I didn't really want to. So I stayed at the CAA. So I worked for 4 years in safety data. And so I'm not sure if people know, but that's where that department we accept or take in maintenance occurrence reporting. So if anything happens in aviation, whether it's on aircraft, off aircraft, in an aerodrome, and people can report in any occurrences or incidents, so incidents, accidents, and then we process them and pass them on to a team that will investigate them if they need to be. So after doing that, it became quite repetitive and it was quite admin based. And so I was able to be involved with the collapse of Thomas Cook and also Monarch. And in doing that, during that period, I was able to network and speak to some people, and I realized there was another role came up, which was a technical standard surveyor. So probably like many of you, I actually didn't know what the role was. When you hear that, you're like, well, what is it? And so a technical standard surveyor, we do all of the desk-based assessments for aircraft airworthiness and certification. So for example, if a foreign aircraft is flying through our airspace, we receive the application and all the documentations to issue with a certificate for an overflight exemption. We also do things like if we have an aircraft that comes from a foreign register or a brand new aircraft that wants to come on our register, we deal with all the desk-based applications and support and documentations for it to be issued with a certificate of airworthiness. We also do engineering licenses. So our team is quite broad, but we do the majority of the desk-based stuff for airworthiness and for general aviation. It's really fulfilling, actually. It's been really interesting. Wasn't necessarily the route that I wanted to go down. I am still very much wanting to go into the practical side, but I guess all experience is good experience. And so, yeah, it's been really good. I've been able to meet some really good people and really network and engage with people that I really wouldn't usually see in my day-to-day role, or just I wouldn't have seen if I wasn't at the CAA. There's so much experience there, people who have been there from like a couple of years to 20 years, 30 years. And so there are some people who that has been their only job. They joined when they were a teenager and have worked there up until they retire. In regards to diversity in aviation, the CAA isn't as diverse as it could be, but we are doing a lot of work for it to be more diverse. I am the chair of the CAA's diversity and inclusion network called All Inclusive. And we have recently had a few events. We had, for Pride Month, we had a transgender pilot who used to be a pilot for British Airways, who came in and had a conversation with us about her transition and how she was best supported and some of the issues that were along her journey. But for the most of it, her journey was positive. We've also got some really good things coming up for Black History Month. And I think we've recognized that it's not as diverse as we can be. But as a regulator, we have to do the work in order to make everything a bit more diverse and just help from the inside. It's more difficult. I know from the outside, it might not look like we do much, or they might not see what we do, but we are taking some really good steps to increase that and be a good representative for industry. So that's from me. Thank you.
That's super. Thank you so much. Really interesting to hear that along your career journey, you've mixed theory with practical experience, and perhaps you're still not quite settled in what you want to do. So exciting times ahead in the future for you, we hope. Also very interesting to hear you made a very valid point about diversity in aviation, that it starts from the inside. And I'm guessing that's inside from the person as well as the organisation. So thank you very much for that. Some really valid points, and I'm sure you'll have some questions on that later on. So thank you. So we now move on to Charles. And if I may introduce Charles, you are the Charles Pereira, the Mission Safety Analyst, if I'm correct.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Harlow College, for having me. My name is Charles Pereira. I'm a mission safety analyst working for space team here at CAA. So as you know, CAA space team is there to regulate the space activities happening from UK and also like overseas, but licensing in UK. So to give my about my life, I was born in France. Then I went to Sri Lanka to study. And my father wants to have me the culture and all the values in Sri Lanka. So I was brought up mainly in Sri Lanka. After completing my studies, I didn't know what to do. I know I was interested in maths, science, and I mean, I was not particularly good at it. I mean, I understand the basic principles, and I could come up with a lot of things. I was more creative person. So when I came to France and I looked for some opportunities in UK, and I found Kingston University as one of the best option for me. So I applied for a space technology course, the BEng course. And when I started the course, I kept the goal that one day I will work for European Space Agency, and that was my goal. And from the moment I started my university, I worked really hard, even though the course was really hard. We had to do a lot of work. I worked really hard. Even I had to work part-time to pay for the tuition fees. So I had to do a lot of sacrification, like compared to the other students, because I didn't have any financial, any good financial background. So I did a lot of sacrification compared to the other students. So in my time, I also saw that I had to work twice the hard as somebody else like me to achieve the goals I need. So after during my university time at Kingston, I had the opportunity to work for a company as a project engineer and R&D engineer. So in the company, I had the opportunity to work all over the UK, basically, and also in Middle East and Europe as well. So I worked really hard in there as well, but it was not related to any space industry. It was a mechanical industry. So even though they offered me a job, I rejected, and I went to apply for a master's at Cranfield University in space engineering. So also there also I had the financial problem. So I had some money collected during my placement year. So I used those money to fund my master's. And during my master's, I had the good opportunity to at the end of the master's, to work for European Space Agency, my ultimate dream. So I I worked really hard, and I was really happy at that time that I could achieve my dream. So I worked in Spain, European Space Agency, for 1 year. I worked with mobile data. Basically, when you see your mobile and you see your location, and the location is coming from signals from satellites. So I was the person who use these signals in order to compute that position. So I did some research work with them, with European Space Agency. After completing 1 year, I was offered another job from the GMB, a Spanish company. After working there 2 years, I worked there for 2 years in different missions. Like I worked missions, Earth missions, like missions that orbit the Earth, and I work missions that will go to Moon. So during my whole career and all my my lifetime up to here, what my advice you to is that basically focus on skill. Like it can be a computer skill, like creative skill, a type of skills that you want to develop, like programming skill, or if you like to do manufacture something. So that's something that industry value the most, even though you have a degree or not. Like if you have those skills, that coming the new generation will be there, that we see that new companies like Google, Microsoft, Apple, that they don't require degree at some point. So if you have like Tesla, for example, or SpaceX, like if you have the right skills, you have more opportunities in the industry. So during my career, I developed a lot of skills that I've stand out from other applicants when I apply to different industry or different job roles. So have like transferable skills that will enable you to gain the opportunities, and just don't give up, and have a goal, and then work hard for it, and set small goals towards the end of the as I said, like when I joined Kingston, I had the dream to work for a space agency, European Space Agency, and I worked hard for it. I gathered all my skills, and at the end, they couldn't reject me because I was qualified for that job. So I think that's one of the way that you could go through. And I remember I was the only Asian person in European Space Agency. There was like 500 employees, and I was the only Asian person. And I was happy that I didn't see myself as Asian. I saw myself as somebody like a person that has a passion to be there, to go to that position. So I encourage you to work hard, collect all these skills, and I'm 100% sure you all get there. Thank you.
Super, thank you so much, Charles. I mean, fabulous global experience for your education and also your career. It's really quite fascinating. Very interesting to hear that from the outset you had clear goals. You worked very hard mixing your part-time job with the university and career studies, but you kept your focus and you overcame your barriers to achieve what you say to be your dream job. And don't we all wish we were in our dream jobs? How fantastic is that? Also, the one thing I took from diversity from you, which I think we should all take, is that never see ourselves in any particular one group, whether it be majority or minority group. We are all equal, and it's about our skills and attributes that are the important factor, not where we've come from. So thank you very much for that, Charles. Really appreciate it. So I'd now like to introduce you to Ranji Goga, who is a space systems engineer. So Ranji, thank you very much for joining us, and over to you.
When I was your age, I started off in studying maths, physics, further maths, design and technology. Didn't really have a plan when I went to university. I was good at physics. I enjoyed physics at A-levels, so I decided to study that at Sheffield. No particular reason other than it it looked nice there when it snowed. I think when I visited, there was like a foot of snow and the whole city was lovely, and several mates went there. So fast forward about 3 years, I wasn't doing that great in physics. I hated the course. Kind of wish I chose something completely different. So I ended up finishing Sheffield and ended up working in finance for a few years. Worst job I ever did. Manager was not very nice. Was studying for AAT, which is a technician's course in finance, and my chartership in finance as well. But what I really enjoyed was, prior to leaving Sheffield, I joined this society called UK SEDS, which is UK Students for Exploration and Development of Space. They're more than welcome to let people your age join, and especially the university students. There's so many projects that are running on at the moment, so I definitely encourage you to get involved if you've got an interest in space. But they do this annual conference a year, which is, I think it's the largest one in the UK in terms of students' conferences relating to space. And there was a lecturer there from Kingston University, which, weirdly enough, is where the other two went to university as well. And we got along. I found him quite interested, so I started looking up more about his course. And I was, after a long time, I was able to convince student finance and my parents to help me pay for a second degree. And that was something I wouldn't recommend if you're uncertain about your first degree, or if you're interested in university or apprenticeships. Do more research than I did, because I definitely didn't, and I ended up paying the price by missing out on about 6 years before getting my career back on path. But thanks to family and student finance, I was able to get things back on track. So I ended up starting at Kingston in 2015 as a mature student, doing that course where I happened to meet that lecturer from a previous conference. And it was a very practical course. That's why I quite enjoyed it. We got to design, on the computers, on CAD, our own rocket system. So, your engine, your injector, your manifolds, the tank systems, and we were able to actually build the vast majority on site. We've had quite a good workshop facilities. And what set Kingston apart is they've got, well, they used to, it's going through some upgrade at the moment. They have one of the few test cells that is run and operated by students. So in my final year, I had the keys to basically the whole site. I took the delivery of liquid oxygen direct from the supplier. I was the one that was requesting all the shipments of the liquid oxygen as well. I had the keys to the gas cage, I had the keys to the test facilities. So we were running everything ourselves. And it is a fantastic place to get practical on the job, on the skills training. And that's what led me to an internship with Orbex. So you haven't heard of them. They're one of the launch companies that are home to launch rockets from Northern Scotland either next year or 2023. So I did that for a summer. Touching on diversity, I never really had any issues with Orbex. So that was based in Copenhagen. I was very aware I was one of the very few Asian people in Copenhagen. Like that, their population is tiny. Like we're talking maybe 1 million or so. So you don't really see many people other than Danish and a few expats. But all of them speak English. It was never an issue me being there at all. But yeah, I did that that was about 2018, and then I started my master's at Cranfield in 2018 in space systems and astronautics. The masters at Cranfield, I didn't do for any particular reason. Cranfield's very highly regarded as a very good aviation and space course, almost internationally. We even have people from America to come over and study at Cranfield. I didn't learn anything different from what I learned at Kingston, but I did it just to put Cranfield on my CV, to be honest. And I'm very happy I did, because we were able to launch a sounding rocket in America 2018, I think. No, 2019, summer 2019. And we're one of the very few UK universities able to do that. So unfortunately, we couldn't recover it. It was a bit of a disaster. But, I think out of 5 teams in the UK, and, God knows how many space universities, we were one of the trailblazers. And now, thanks to other universities like Sheffield doing Project Sunride, everyone's going to be a lot more interested in that. I realised I've missed out my job role at CAA, so I'm going to backtrack a little bit. So while I was at Kingston, like Solitaire mentioned, there was an internship opportunity available in the summer to get safety data back on track, because I think they had 18,000 reports outstanding at the time. So I turned myself quite instrumental in that. And like she said, we were one of our team of about 20 or so. It was about half a dozen of us that ended up staying on at the CA and trying to make it a career. I never actually planned to make the CA my career. I got along with everyone. Certainly, it was quite a nice mix of people. There's people from all over the world. Not really a 50-50 split, as Solitaire said, but you've got people from Africa, India, Sri Lanka, like Charles said. But you've got Eastern Europeans, you've got some Russians, some Americans. So it's quite a nice mix because you could be chatting to anyone and they've got a very different background to you. So it's quite nice to work for this company. But eventually, probably more about 10 years ago, UK got very interested in getting back into the launch market for space. So that's why you'll hear about Newquay, Sutherland and the Shetlands talking about building a spaceport. It's all thanks to some discussions that were, almost 10 years ago. And the CA is now the commercial space regulator for the UK. And happily, I happened to be in the right place at the right time to join the team. And because I was one of the few people in the organisation and in the UK to have actually worked for a launch provider, I was able to talk myself into a role. That's probably about it.
That's super, Ranji. Thank you so much. Amazing to say that you had no plan, no goal, and it's okay not to do that as long as you reach your true potential in the end. And I love the fact that you mentioned just very humbly about all the different things that you've done, getting involved in projects, internships, ambassadorships. It seems to be the key. And as Charles said, and Solitaire endorsed earlier, it's about using your personal skills and sticking to what you know that you can do and going out there and telling people that you can do it. It doesn't matter where you come from. And it's lovely to hear that you personally have enjoyed a very diverse workplace and not come across any barriers. It's been very inspirational. Thank you very much. And thank you to all three of you for your really, really interesting and inspiring talks. So if I could ask you now perhaps to put your seatbelts on, because we're going to start with some questions for you. So we're going to go to room 9. And our first question is from Darcy Hanks.
What is the best piece of advice you have been given about a career choice?
Say it louder. Yeah.
What is the best piece of advice you've been given about a career choice?
So for me, it's to just try. You don't have to know what you want to do from the very beginning. I mean, if you like something, you're passionate about it, give it a try. And honestly, I think, so like Ranji, I went to Kingston as a mature student. I mean, when you're young, just try whatever goes. You don't have to, I mean, that's the time to try different things. And you don't have to cement yourself into something. If you try something, you don't like it, try something else. There are so many different things that you can do. So yeah, I think also the best thing that happened was that no one put pressure on me to decide what I wanted to do. Sometimes people say, oh, why don't you be this? Or why don't you be that? That was never an issue. I've got 3 sisters. One did sports science, one's a solicitor, and one's a dietitian. And then there's me who went into engineering. So you decide your path yourself. There's nothing that sets it out for you.
Thank you. That's super. Thank you. And thank you, Darcy, for asking that question. So also in room 9, we have Jalen, who would like to ask a secondary question along the same lines. So perhaps Charles or Ranji, you might be able to answer this one for us.
Charles.
Yeah.
It's like Charles. Question.
Yeah.
Charles, no. What advice do you have for us when thinking about a career in aviation?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
I said, what advice do you have for us when thinking about a career in aviation?
I would say definitely take as your time, like during summer, during any holidays, get an internship. Get an internship and get experience. Because once you put your CV to a company, the people will go through your CV and see what you have done for this role, basically the role you apply. So if you are really passionate about going to the aviation, let's say you want to become an engineer. So if you have a experience in doing some maintenance for a small aircraft company, so it will be so valuable. So they know that, oh, you're really passionate. So you have found some time in your life to dedicate for that. So I would 100% say that like each year, if you have holidays, 2 weeks, it doesn't matter how much time, 2 weeks, 1 week, or 1 month, if you can get some kind of experience, do it, and try to get skills, learn communication skills, management skills, how to organize your stuff, learn those skills, and then be better yourself and be prepared to become better in the industry. So just do that, just get the experience.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sounds like excellent advice. Thank you very much. So we're now going to move to room 8. And our first question comes from Cassie O'Grady.
How does the CAA specifically currently tackle diversity in aviation?
I think I'll take that one. So we have recently set up a diversity and inclusion network called All Inclusive. And it was initially a group of like-minded, passionate people. But now we've also made sure that we advertise it throughout the CAA as not just people who have a passion for, people who also want to be allies. So people who necessarily don't have a lived experience, but think actually I support diversity, or I support things that are inclusive. So what are we doing to tackle? Well, we're educating ourselves first. We can't really set an example if we're not doing that within ourselves. And so we've had different speakers come in. We've had different policies. We've got, we're including the policy on the HALO code. So I'm not sure if you know what that is, but that is just about the discrimination, or the getting rid of the discrimination on Afro-Caribbean hair and hairstyles that weren't necessarily seen as professional, but now are. We've got things like the transgender policy, we've got respect ambassadors. There is a lot of work that we're doing to educate our colleagues so that we can be a better representative to the aviation industry.
That sounds like there's a lot going on actually behind the scenes that maybe even we don't know about, or isn't splashed all over the internet. So thank you very much for clearing that up for us, Solitaire. So also within the same room, we have a second question from Callum Pitt.
What personal attributes and skills or qualifications do you think the CAA will look for in the future, and why?
I'm happy to take that if you want. So a couple of years ago, I actually did interview people, and specifically for the CA, and more specifically that role, we were kind of looking for anyone that had studied anything related to aviation. So it could just be aerospace, it could just be pilot studies, or it could be like Solitaire's course where she was almost a B1 licensed engineer. So anything kind of relating to aviation, even if it's something you've just gone like glider flying at the weekends with your parents, or university air squadron, or the cadet equivalent, anything that shows that you've got an interest in aviation, that's fantastic. And if you can prepare for the role, definitely do so. I mean, when Solitaire and I first started, we hadn't really heard of MORs, like mandatory occurrence reporting. I mean, that's something I looked up the night before, and I was able to impress the two managers at the time. In terms of broader experience, definitely start with at least those courses I mentioned. If you can do any like soft skills, just like working on your communication skills. So I've interviewed people in the past where I wouldn't say they're like introverts, but they have been quite shy. They haven't really been forthcoming with information, and they're most of the times it is just nerves, but if you're trying to recruit for a position, you need someone that you can talk to. You need to know that they're going to work well in a team, that you can leave them alone for most of the day and just get on with the job. So the people that are more confident in the interviews do tend to get the roles, and that's not necessarily ideal, because not everyone are extroverts. So you need to balance it off. So if you are a bit more shy, you don't really like talking to people in interviews, make sure your CV is padded out with like fantastic academic work, or like project works, like what the other two mentioned. Like if you can do things during like the summer holidays, either internships or some kind of engineering project. So like a sounding rocket, or I don't know, Formula One racing, or something of the equivalent. And there's plenty of clubs out there if you can just search them up and say you want to get involved. Like I don't know if you guys at a college have heard of the Nuffield Foundation, but they do a Gold Crest Award and I think a Silver Crest Award. And the idea is that you do some kind of engineering or science kind of project over a summer or over a year, and you normally get industry sponsors. So a friend of mine actually works with A-level students, and I think they actually scored very highly in the previous summer round. I forget what the project was, which was probably the most interesting thing, but the one I did when I was younger was looking at near-infrared spectroscopy, and I don't know if that did help me get my degree in Sheffield, if it got me through the admission process, but I'd like to think it did. At the very least, I learned something interesting about spectroscopy. So I definitely work on achieving good results while you're at Harlow. But if you can get involved in projects as well, definitely do that, because it will just make your CV stand out much more.
Thank you, Ranji. That's really interesting to know. It's very clear that we have to look at ourselves as a holistic person, not just the academic person, but also the human person. As you mentioned, soft skills and confidence. So thank you very much for that. So we're now going to move to room 6. And I'd like to invite Randolph Clark to ask the first question from room 6.
Go, Randolph. Okay, so how has COVID affected your job role?
Yeah, I think I can answer this question. So, I mean, I recently joined CAA like about a couple of months ago. But before that, I was working for a Spanish company. I was doing the lead of the project for Luna mission. So it was difficult in terms of meeting people and solving things on the go. But as you know, like I'm an analyst, I do a lot of computation and simulation, a lot of programming. So for me, it was quite easy. So we found out like the other ways of doing things. So I think people are quite good in adapting to different things. So we have our networks are set up to work remotely 100%. Maybe we can do for rest of our lives, but we prefer to have that people connection. So we organize sometimes to go to the office, and we do these meetings together with the other engineering team. So I would say it affected a little bit in terms of I wouldn't say productivity. We have seen that like most of, I mean, you have seen that in the news that most of the companies are their productivity has gone up. But we have seen that even though like the human interaction is quite less, even though the productivity is up. So people have people organize their time, and some people prefer to work home, and some people prefer to work from like hybrid home and in office. So I think we have come to an age that you don't see like 9-to-5 jobs, like fully going to the office and do everything in the office. But maybe in future you will have this hybrid setup where you go to the office if you need to go, and then you organize your work around that. So I think it had a big impact in the first go, but now we all are now used to it.
I think for us in the technical standards and aircraft certification, aircraft documents were always issued on paper, on lettered headed paper with a nice little stamp that had my authorization number on it. But because people aren't haven't been able to go out to aircraft, a lot of the stuff we've done is desktop. So airworthiness checks will be done from the desk in the airworthiness department. So we've had to look at a lot more and ask applicants for a lot more to certify or to gauge the airworthiness of an aircraft. So we've gone electronic in a lot more ways than we thought we would have ever gone before, which has been really interesting. And we've had to step our technology up. So it's probably something that we needed to do. We just weren't planning to do it so soon. So yeah, the day of electronic certificates and everything else.
Excellent, thank you very much. It's so good to hear that the world of aviation is definitely moving away from paper-based operations now, finally. So thank you for that. And our second question from room 6 comes from Sade Scott, please.
Do you think that any of the changes made during COVID will be permanent?
Can you repeat it? I didn't get it.
Do you think any of the changes made during COVID will be permanent?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like Charles mentioned before, we're very much a hybrid, on a hybrid working plan. So prior up until very recently, I hadn't been in the office in about 20 months. And going forward, I'd probably be only in the office once or twice a month at most. So, you know, I used, like, the office is based in Gatwick and Westferry, which is Canary Wharf. And, you know, for a long time, I used to be based in those areas. But now I've moved out to Bristol to be, you know, closer to my partner's family. So, you know, it doesn't really matter so much where you live now. You don't have to live close to work. You know, you can live somewhere cheaper, even though Bristol's not as cheap. And then, you know, you just commute in whenever you can. And most organisations are accommodating that. Certainly the CAE is, and I've got friends in other organisations that, you know, will say some things very similar. But I mean, like Charles said, I mean, there is no replacement for that face-to-face. I mean, especially when you're growing a new team, it's a lot easier to train people or get that kind of trust built up in the face-to-face environment. It's very hard to do over Teams or and Zoom, although, you know, we've done the best we can. Relating to like the wider industry, obviously some things will never change. Like a D1, D2 engineer will always have to go on site. You know, the maintenance work cannot occur via Teams. I mean, amazing if it could, but you know, that will still very much be a shift-based pattern. And I will say, because of the pandemic, there is a shortage of licensed and experienced B1, B2 engineers, just because, you know, some have gone, well, you know, this is kind of affecting me, I'm going to just take an early retirement. So now is a fantastic time to get into aviation, and especially on the practical side of things.
Yeah, to add to that, like, humans are built to be in a community. So, I mean, even though you are working on your own in the office, you are more, you can learn more and absorb more as a student if you are in the workplace. So if you get an internship or anything, like, try to go there to the office or to the place, and then like interact with face to face. I think it will be very useful for the beginning of your career. And maybe when you get experience, it's good to do your own by your own everything. So if you have a chance to get like one-to-one experience, just go for it.
I think, sorry, one thing for me is our impact on the environment. So we've gone from being very heavily paper-based to not using much at all. Printers, I mean, there were loads of things that I'd have to print out in the office, and at home I don't have a printer and don't need to. And so we're not recycling or wasting paper. There is a lot, we aren't probably using our cars as much to go into the office. And so I think those things, you can only continue them if you see the benefits of them. Why would you go back? So I think that's one of the things that will always stay.
That's really good to know. Thank you. Sustainability within the environment and not just within the workplace is really important. So thank you for highlighting that. So we're now moving to our last room, which is room 5, and I'd like to invite Jay Biddle to ask your question.
So you mentioned that you've all been to university before, some of you twice. Are there any alternative pathways into the aerospace industry?
Yeah, I would definitely say yes. For example, you can, like, in aerospace industry, you definitely have different varieties of jobs. Like, I mean, you can be a software engineer, like in aerospace, you can be a maintenance engineer. So of course there are like other, I mean, for maintenance engineer, you could do an apprenticeship and then you could get your B2 or the other license, and then you could go from there. So, and then I've seen my cousin also, he did after O levels, he did apprenticeship, and then he went to do his license, and then after that he found that he wanted to move up, so he did a degree funded by British Airways. So then he moved up to the supervisor level. So I think it's best, like, I mean, I'm saying to anybody, like, it's not always about the degree. I mean, you can get your degree anytime, but you cannot get your skills and experience, because once you go to age 30 and it's something in the industry that it's best to have good experience by age 30, and you can get a degree at any time. So that's why I encourage, I mean, when I was small, like when I was at your age, I would tell myself, Charles, do much as experience. Just don't waste your holidays going on. I mean, you need to enjoy your holidays going traveling, but maybe 1 week do some kind of get some experience working in some kind of a rocket company or interesting company. Just do like a non-paid internship. So yeah, I would say there are a lot of ways you can get to the companies, and I've seen like some people without degrees working in a companies, and the company, they fund them to do the degrees and in order to move them to in their position, like to upper position. So it's up to you. Like, I mean, that's why I'm saying for all of you, just if you are passionate about something, like it doesn't have to be a big thing, and don't follow anybody, don't listen to anybody. If you're passionate about something, just learn those skills, and then on the way up, just get the requirements you need to get that job.
So for me, I studied aircraft engineering at Marshall's, but actually after my first year, I realized maybe that university wasn't the best route. Maybe an apprenticeship and getting your license, which takes practical. There are different routes to do it. You can go to a college, or I know at the time Marshall's, or now Marshall's, do a degree with university in Wales, which means you can get your licenses that route. But honestly, if you know what you want to do, university might not be the best route. And I know some people don't like, people assume that university is very hard to do if it's not something you really want to go down that route. So like Ranji, or like even like Charles, I went to uni Monday to Thursday, worked Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's financially a lot. It can be on you and family, and I think apprenticeships could also be a good route. One thing that my tutor always said to me, because he was part of the RAF and came to tutor, was sometimes you just turn up at like a fly-in school and say to them, I would really like to learn how to fly, or really like to know a bit more. Can I come in and volunteer for a couple of days? And sometimes they'll maybe do that in exchange for some flying lessons, and that's a route that you can go down. There are so many things, you just have to find and ask. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there and say, actually, do you know what, let me try this route, let me try volunteering, let me try going to, I know in Gatwick there's an aviation museum, and for a little while I used to volunteer there to get the practical hands-on experience, which you can't get at university. You might do some practical, but it's never the same. So there are so many different routes. It depends what you really want to do.
I just agree with what Solitaire said. I had a friend who basically volunteered on jet engines at a local airport, and that was a large factor in how he got his job designing engines at Rolls-Royce. So you absolutely don't have to go to university. And you know, you can take apprenticeships. That is definitely a route in. But I will caveat that with space roles tend to be for like people with degrees. It's very uncommon to have people with apprenticeships that ended up in the space sector. That it definitely happens. My colleague, it was true for him, and he's in the same team I am. But the vast majority undertake some kind of bachelor's or some kind of master's and then go on to work in the space sector. And especially pilot studies, those courses, especially the funded ones, are so highly competitive. You know, you have to be kind of amazing to get on those. Like I know many people who could, you know, be fantastic commercial airline pilots that sadly didn't get the opportunity just because the competition was that fierce. And it's not because they were poor candidates by any chance. It's just they were better candidates. So you have to work really hard to try and get on those. So if you're trying to get onto the pilot's course, if you can somehow get a PPL prior to doing that application, that will stand you in good stead. If you can't do a PPL, maybe try doing some gliders, joining a glider club, and then try and just use friends and family and their kind of contacts and just see who's available. And like Solitaire said, volunteer at these clubs, at these museums, and that will help you stand out. And you know, because no one wants to pay for their own pilot's course, because you know it's a deposit on like a very large house. So either your parents will have to remortgage or you'll have to win the lottery. So that definitely volunteer.
Okay, thank you all for that. Some really interesting answers there. I know we're short of time, but we do have one more question, again from room 5, from Valentina, if you would like to pose your question.
A lot of things are happening in the world right now that are affecting aviation. So what do you think the future of aviation will look like and why?
I think aviation will pick up. I mean, everybody loves a holiday. Who doesn't? I think that the fear around COVID has meant that people have taken a step back. But actually, I think it will take a few years to get to a good place, but I don't think we'll remain where we are for a long time. I think we just have to, I think it's really difficult because it impacted the world. You know, if it was just us, we can say, do you know what, it will take X amount of time and that will be resolved. But I don't think we'll be where we are for long. Even when you look at things like the CAA's new space department, there are so many things that we are taking on because there are so many things going on that it doesn't look like it will stay as is. But it also is really difficult being working in aviation. I know that some of my colleagues have partners who worked for airlines and who had lost their jobs or were furloughed. And so we're kind of struggling in that. There are some engineers or people who have only known one job for a long time in their career. And so having to find other jobs outside of that is quite strange to them, but I think it will pick up.
Yeah, just to add to that, I just want to say that don't be afraid. Because if you look the history, this is not the first time we are going through the pandemic, and people have always defeat those rough times and come up. So if you have a dream, so for example, aviation is something that will never go away. So you will see all the stock market crashing, all the flights are like on hold, but it's temporary, and everything is going to go back to normal, and we will find alternative ways how to tackle. I mean, have you seen the vaccine is an example of that. So don't be afraid. So there are a lot of, as Solitaire said, there are a lot of opportunities are arising. So if you see the space world, we see the government spending so much money on space, so much money on innovation, innovators, new business ideas. So it's for you, for your generation, to think about like what you can do, and maybe an idea like a business idea. You don't necessarily have to follow a career path. You can build your own career. You can you can build your own business. It can be in space industries, can be in any industries. So it doesn't have to be you have to follow a one path or follow somebody else. Say, if you like something, if you have an idea that's going to change the world, I think no one here is to stop you. So fail if you want to fail now. So you will learn from failures and then use those failures to go forward. So good luck.
Just adding on to probably more of a technical point, we've got various things in the works like Jet Zero aviation, so that's like reducing the carbon footprint for all the jet airlines. So things like battery technology, hydrogen technology, hydrogen battery technology, and improving the current lithium-ion batteries as well. So if you're looking at a research area or something you want to focus on, that would be my kind of suggestion. I mean, obviously there's things called VTOL, so you were talking about having people fly around London on these either one-man or six people crewed or passengers. And you fly around from London on these little on these things that are probably no bigger than a Land Rover or slightly larger. Whether that will actually happen or not, who knows, because obviously no one really wants the idea of something like that crashing into a skyscraper. But if you can make it safe, and that is largely the CA's responsibility as well as the operator, to make sure they can be made safe. I mean, that could revolutionize air travel. I mean, you won't have to now, I don't know, go from one end to the other onto London on the tube. You can just get a small little flight if you're rich enough. In terms of space, I mean, America has already been doing reusable launches for a while now. Europe has been talking about that as well. So you're likely to see some kind of reusable launcher happening in Europe maybe in the next 10, 20 years. As for larger developments, the small sat launchers are kind of taken off. UK will definitely have some kind of launch capability in the next 5 years, probably, whether it's horizontal or vertical or something else, who knows. But now is a fantastic time to get involved in either sectors. And if you're not already doing so, there's a fantastic magazine called ADS, and they're kind of like the industry board, I'd say. And, you know, there's fantastic news articles about that. And you can also get a great one called Spaceflight, which I believe is a Royal Aeronautical one. And that will tell you a lot of like the industry developments. They will probably even say the authors' names and their references. So it's a fantastic way to try and get in touch with those people who are at the cutting edge and the leading front of these technological innovations.
Yeah, just to add to Ranji's, like if you want to learn some skill, like imagine you want to learn some flight dynamics, how a satellite fly in orbit, just go to Coursera or edX and then learn those skills. Like if you're really passionate about, like imagine you're passionate about aircraft mechanics or aircraft materials. So you just search in the internet and then you will have a different lessons you can learn from. So there are a lot of things available. So I think you can learn a lot of things from these courses. I really highly recommend using Coursera or edX.
That's super. Thank you all very, very much for your input. Thank you to our question masters. Some really good questions there, thought-provoking. So I'd like to round up this webinar for today. Firstly, a very sincere thank you to Solitaire, Ranji, and to Charles for giving up your time and your open and honest views and opinions on both diversity in aviation and just to talk to us about your career pathways. It's truly inspirational to see that no matter what your starting out point is, that none of you have given up, and that's definitely a point that we're taking away. And it truly is a combination of hard work and knowing your own skills and attributes that will get you through. So we really do appreciate it. Thank you all very, very much for your time.
Thank you all for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it was really good. So good luck, everybody. I hope you see in the industry.
Thank you. We'll close out this webinar now, and thank you all very much for attending.
Thanks.
Best wishes.
Bye-bye.